Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
What seemed like a very surprising election outcome was perhaps not so out of the blue when viewed as simply one more sign that many people in Britain have a thirst for change. There is an insurrection against the old ruling class. It has roots in the financial crash of a decade ago. It saw the elite overruled by the people on Brexit. And it seems that insurrection is not over. That doesn't explain all of it, but it gets you some of the way. Well, our political editor, Nick Watt, is with me. Nick, how long have you been reporting on this stuff?
A number of years, maybe a number of decades.
Right. And this must rank as one of the most extraordinary things you've seen.
Yes, I mean, I think the best way of describing the atmosphere in the cabinet is completely shell-shocked. In the final weeks of the campaign, there was a consensus that the Conservative campaign was deeply flawed. That's what ministers thought. But they did not see this result coming. And an interesting sign of that, they thought it was all OK because the postal votes looked all OK. But when they opened the ballot boxes, the real ballot boxes, it was a different story. But the big lesson to take from this is that Theresa May's Brexit strategy has really been turned on its head. She wanted to get that strong mandate to give her authority at home and authority in Brussels. And the danger for her now is that she's going to be moved from pillar to post. There will be the hardline Eurosceptics in Welsh and English seats. Then you'll have Scottish Conservatives who will want, banned word, a soft Brexit.
Any 10 of them basically can
exactly.
do that, yeah.
And then the DUP, who are massively in favour of Brexit, when you actually look at their manifesto, the language is quite conciliatory about a customs arrangement with the EU, because obviously they want a frictionless border with
Where does this leave Theresa May? I mean, this is the question that everybody is asking today. Where does it leave her? How long has she got?
Well, I would say that Theresa May is weak and diminished, and in a sign of that, this evening she reappointed 5 of her most senior cabinet ministers to their posts. She had been planning quite a significant reshuffle. And it's interesting, I understand that some members of the cabinet have made clear in no uncertain terms to Downing Street that the Prime Minister must sack her 2 joint chiefs of staff, Nick Timothy and Fiona Hill. They are regarded as secretive and uncollegiate, and in the case of Nick Timothy, he was the author of the social care element of the manifesto that led to that U-turn and defined the final stage of the Conservative campaign. Now, as to the Prime Minister, opinions in the cabinet are divided. I spoke to one member of the cabinet who said if she wants to stay on, she should stay on. But other ministers, I understand, are saying she should think of going in the next few months because the Conservatives cannot afford another encounter between Theresa May and the electorate. And interestingly, they are all agreed on one thing. The Conservatives must do all they can to avoid another election because they fear if that happened, we would be seeing a Corbyn premiership.
Thanks, Nick. Well, Nick spent the day here in Westminster, where I should say, by the way, there's been enormous atmosphere of protesters, people passing by, onlookers and the press. Nick's been examining the shape of Theresa May's new government and asking, can she govern?
For now, Theresa May continues as Her Majesty's 13th Prime Minister. But she stumbled back into Downing Street after being run a close second by a man who for 3 decades has been dismissed by all parties as a marginal figure.
This government will guide the country through the crucial Brexit talks.
It was almost as if nothing had changed as Theresa May pledged to lead another government. Ministers told Newsnight that the Prime Minister's failure to acknowledge in her statement that she had squandered a Tory majority was a major mistake. Within a few hours, there was a new hint of contrition.
I'm sorry for all those candidates and hard-working party workers who weren't successful.
Tories are divided over Theresa May's future. Eurosceptics are determined to keep the author of Brexit means Brexit. Others say she should go within a few months to allow for an orderly Tory leadership contest to avoid yet another circus. Normally on the Friday after a general election, College Green here in the shadow of the Houses of Parliament would be teeming with cabinet ministers tripping over themselves to hail a wonderful general election victory, or if things didn't go quite as planned, saying they're disappointed and saying how they hope to govern in the national interest. This afternoon, well, I can't really see any cabinet ministers. I've been speaking to ministers. They say they are profoundly disappointed with this election result, and they are furious, and they are blaming Theresa May and her very small circle of advisers. Particular anger has been aimed at Theresa May's gatekeepers, Fiona Hill and Nick Timothy. Do you think she might need to have a rethink of how she runs things, the inner circle, the two chiefs of staff?
I think the Cabinet will demand a rethink. I think they will say we have to do things differently around here. You have to widen the circle of people that advise you. You have to listen to across the party.
For the moment, this diminished Prime Minister will attempt to govern with the help of Northern Ireland's Democratic Unionists, probably a confidence and supply arrangement in which they would support a Queen's speech and a budget. That will mean lots of late nights as Theresa May seeks to pass other legislation. The proposed tie-up with a party that opposes gay marriage and abortion is causing alarm among Tory modernisers, notably the leader of the Scottish Conservatives, Ruth Davidson. And then there is the small matter of Brexit. Theresa May called this general election to give herself a free hand in the Brexit negotiations and to ensure she is hostage to no one. That calculation has backfired in spectacular fashion, and she may well now find that she's pulled it in all directions. There will be the hardline Eurosceptics who demand that she lives up to her commitment to pull out of the single market and to pull out of most of the customs union. But then there'll be a contingent of Tories in Scotland who will want precisely the opposite. And to cap it all, there is the DUP, who has talked about how they want a special customs arrangement to protect Northern Ireland. However, two veterans of the Northern Ireland peace process say there are inherent dangers in relying on DUP support.
Well, firstly, I think it's a very big mistake. Since 1991, the British government has made it clear that it is neutral in Northern Ireland. It doesn't take sides between Unionists, Nationalists and Republicans. To change that would be a catastrophic mistake. It would really undermine the whole basis of the peace agreement. And furthermore, it would make it incredibly difficult to set up a new executive in Northern Ireland. Up to now, the British government has been the neutral party trying to bring the two sides together. How can it possibly pretend to be neutral when it's supported by one particular party that can pull the plug on it at any stage? So I think it really could undermine all that we've achieved over the last several decades in Northern Ireland, and I think it's a big, big mistake.
I think this election has got us to a situation where actually independence for Scotland is a long way off. I don't think we're going to go there for a long time. I think the issue for the Union of the United Kingdom, is now going to focus much more on Northern Ireland.
The traditional journey in the early hours of the morning by the election winner from their constituency to London should be a triumphal drive. Instead, Theresa May was left to contemplate with her husband Philip May how the gamble she took with great reluctance has left her premiership in grave peril.
It's amazing how much the trajectory matters, isn't it? She got more votes than Labour, but still it doesn't feel that way. Well, look, Eric Pickles was a Conservative MP for 25 years until this election, former Cabinet Minister and former Chair of the Conservative Party. I caught up with him earlier. Eric Pickles, can you think of a self-inflicted political wound bigger than the one we've just seen?
Yes, I probably can, but I don't
See if
think.
you can.
But I don't think that really matters. What matters is what you do with it. Anybody can be a great leader when everything is going well. Now, Theresa's going to be tested, and I think she'll pass the test in terms of being able to get a majority in the House of Commons for what she wants to do, and then being able to start the process of Brexit.
Let's go through some apologies. Do you think the Conservative Party should apologise for invoking a 2-year Article 50 period and then wasting 8 weeks by having an election campaign, which they obviously assumed they would win, because it would have been ridiculous to invoke Article 50 if you didn't think you were going to win?
I don't think in the end it makes an earth of difference, because of course the real meat of the negotiation was always going to be in the autumn. The talks that we're about to have in a couple of weeks is largely procedural in terms of setting out the order of things and agreeing to a programme of activity. So in truth, I don't think it would make a bit of difference.
OK, one last apology. Vote Tory, get DUP. Or The DUP will have a position of influence in the government of the UK now, much stronger than many of your voters would have expected or would have wanted. Would you apologise to them that they've ended up getting something that they perhaps didn't anticipate?
Well, I don't believe for a moment, in terms of our broader policies, that having an understanding with the DUP to be able to deliver many of our manifesto commitments is something that we should apologise.
You don't think there'll be any concessions to the DUP for supporting the government?
Well, I've no idea, because I'm not privy
Well, one
to
would
the
expect there would be, because they're going to want some concessions, whether it's motorways in Northern Ireland or hospitals and school buildings.
But the alternative of Mr. Corbyn renationalising everything, of a very radical programme, I think is worthwhile. And that's the nature of politics. And the reason why it's worthwhile doing is this. We got more votes than Labour. We got more MPs than Labour. And I think she has an ability to be able to try and put together a coalition to survive.
What about the Brexit mandate? Because a lot of the Corbyn votes were by Remainers who didn't like the hard Brexit vision of Theresa May. She asked for the mandate. She clearly didn't get the mandate, did she? Or is your contention that she now has a mandate to deliver the Brexit she suggested she wanted?
The mandate she has is an ability to be able to pass the process through the House of Commons and the House of Lords. Now, of course, she has to be very cognizant of the size of her majority. And
just a bit.
And my own view, and it's always been one, this is the biggest deal outside the Second World War for this country, is it shouldn't just be a conservative view, that we should reach across to people beyond our party. I've always felt that, to Labour, to Liberal Democrats, and to the DUP.
And do you think a much softer Brexit, or no Brexit, but a much softer Brexit, one that leaves us in the single market and the customs union, is now likely?
I think being able to stay as full members of both those just about impossible, and it wasn't really what public voted for. Now the question is the level of access and what we need to do to get that level of access, and it could be that the price that we have to pay, which probably relates to free movement, might be one that would be unpalatable to the British public.
How long do you think Theresa May can hang on?
I think she can do the full term.
5 years?
I think
Are you joking?
No, I'm joking. I'm an esteemed person like your good self.
Right, I mean, a hung parliament, you think can last 5 years?
Yeah, a hung parliament all over Europe, all over the world lasts.
With a damaged leader, with a very badly damaged leader.
And as I said earlier, this is her big test. It's how you deal with adversity. And I believe, actually, that she will rise to the occasion.
Eric Pickles talking to me earlier. So how is this going to play out from here? What does it all mean for the Conservatives and for Labour? Nadine Zahawi is the newly re-elected Tory MP for Stratford-upon-Avon. John Prescott, Lord Prescott, is Labour royalty and was Deputy Prime Minister for a decade under Tony Blair. She's not going to make 5 years, Nadine. You're not going to try and sustain that line, are you?
Well, if you look at what we're about to embark upon, which is this incredible negotiation with our European colleagues of the Brexit, I sat on the Foreign Affairs Committee in the last Parliament, and we had an inquiry into what happens if there's no deal. When we asked the question of Lord Hill, Jonathan Hill, who's our last commissioner, a man steeped in sort of EU understanding, his advice was that all parties should come together and back the Prime Minister with a strong mandate to negotiate on our
So she
behalf.
would then obviously have to compromise on her vision to accommodate the other parties' views as well, correct? There's no point in just saying, why don't you all come in and back me? She has to then accommodate and compromise.
I'd take a step back and say, when you negotiate, you've got to have a mandate to negotiate and then bring back the deal to Parliament, which we've already.
Yeah, but
both the Prime Minister and
there's no point in saying we have a big tent, but everybody has to just do what I want to do. You'd have to say that would mean softening the Brexit, right?
Right, but when you're negotiating with 27 other countries,
well, then what are you saying?
What you need is what I'm saying is, in the national interest, which is what Jonathan Hill said, come together. And this is the sort of my big offer tonight to Lord Prescott. Come together, offer that mandate in the national interest, let the Prime Minister negotiate, in that negotiating process, we're going to come back to Parliament anyway.
Do you find this interesting, Lord Prescott? Would you be up for that?
Well, first of all, be lucky if she lasts for 5 months. She's no longer got the authority or the strength. Listening to Pickles there, talking about, well, she could go 5 years. He must be in another world. Where they're going to get the split is much in the party lines of the Tories, because once we get down to Brexit, make no mistake, it will split the Tory party. So we're going to see a lot of politics going on. She's not strong enough to handle it. It's a parliament full of Remainers, and you can't think for a moment just on that one issue she can handle it. She says she's going to meet 27 negotiators, prime ministers. She couldn't handle 7 party leaders in a debate here, and that's one of the problems now. So I think the party problems will become big here, and I don't think the coalition can last. What, with the Democratic Unionists? I don't think that can last. So what we need to do on both parts, I think in the Labour Party, for example, we have a different approach. We've laid out what our position is to the Brexit negotiations.
Well, she's laid out her objectives.
Yes, but at the end of the day, why she called the election was because she thought that the Labour Party had voted against it. It's probably so.
John, you say that we have a parliament full of Remainers. Matteo Renzi, the Italian Prime Minister, at the time of Brexit, said, look, we've got to deliver a good Brexit for both the British people and the Europeans, because if you don't, then you render democracy meaningless. So this idea that we're still in 2 tribes, that there's a tribe of Remainers and there's a tribe of Leavers,
oh, there's Labour and there's Conservative. Look, politics is changing quite radically at the moment. Make no mistake about it. Young people have decided to have some say in it, right? The politics is changing to such an extent that certainly for the Labour Party, we need to get our act together. We didn't win that election, but perhaps if we hadn't had a 2/3 no vote in Jeremy and a few cryptic comments, if they will now come together, and at the moment, I can't keep up with people who now say we were wrong. Mandelson on television saying we were wrong.
So let's change. And they need to come back. They need to join the shadow cabinet. And does Jeremy Corbyn need to stick, or does he need to stick at his manifesto? Should he compromise a little to try and make it easier for them to come in?
I think the manifesto...
Or is he now
the
just
manifesto's up. That was one of the big things that happened in my touring round the marginals. When that manifesto came out, that's enthused people.
You were Deputy Prime Minister under Tony Blair.
Yeah.
Corbyn hasn't got a good word for Tony Blair, has he? I mean, it's interesting. The party's had such a journey, and you've just like sailed
He's
along.
Overwhelmingly voted twice as the leader, right?
It's 2 different parties. The Blair party that you were Deputy Prime Minister in, and now you're... I know, but you've just joined this other Corbyn party as though you've done...
I was what they called old Labour, not new Labour. And the values in that manifesto are more to do with the old Labour values. But the point is, the public liked it, the youngsters liked it. We won't move away from that manifesto. Get that case over to the public.
Why didn't they scrap tuition fees under Tony Blair and Lord Prescott? Actually, they put them up. They trebled them.
Yeah.
Well,
you can offer anything to everybody. It's very easy to do that when you don't have the responsibility of balancing the books.
Look, the politics is changing.
Politics has changed, and you're right about the young, and you're right about engagement.
In Parliament it's changing, in the parties it's changing. You now have to adjust to a new kind of election.
I want to talk, because we never got an answer from you on Theresa May, and I think you just skirted off it because you didn't want to answer it. She said she didn't have a big enough mandate when she had a majority. She now has less of a majority. She has no mandate, does she? And no mandate, certainly for the Brexit vision she has.
By her own definition.
But she's also...
By her definition, definition.
Look, you're absolutely right. And to pretend otherwise would be insulting your viewers and yourself.
Or another U-turn.
Hold on. But she's also a Democrat. She will accept the outcome of this election.
We're the largest party. She won't debate it.
We're the largest party. We can govern. And I think you've got to remember, Theresa May really does care about the national interest and getting a good deal out of the negotiations. You shake your head, Evan.
No, the electorate shakes their head.
She genuinely cares about this.
They all care.
But what she's
genuinely...
She does care about what happens in the next 2 years.
Do you think
that really does matter?
Do you think it matters if we change Prime Minister mid, or even have another election mid Article 50 process? I mean, because it could obviously complicate the whole Brexit thing.
I don't think that's the right thing to do.
So you think Theresa May can make 5 years.
I think she can make 5 years. I tell
And
you
we
what,
can hold you to that. And so when she makes 5 months, and you won't say, well, we all knew it was only going to be 5 months.
He'll tell you why he's changed his mind.
No, hold on a second. This is all going to rest on the negotiations. If Labour are responsible and actually do the right thing in the national interest, then I think we can get there.
But what we demand,
if they play politics with this,
demand from those negotiations,
Lord Prescott, I want
what you got from negotiations is quite different to them. We've laid it out and spelt it out. So when it comes to debate, if they say bad deal, no deal, all those kind of arguments, she comes back. We will vote against it if it doesn't meet our criteria.
If they came to you and said, let us agree a mandate that is a compromise between your vision and the Conservative vision, would you be up for that kind of thing, so that Britain has a united front?
If it's near to what Labour has laid down as its requirements for those negotiations, that's where the splits will come, because we're not prepared just to accept.
But you want to control our borders.
Trust me, I'm going to negotiate. She's just been rejected by most of the elect who don't believe her. She's done so many U-turns. She won't survive.
One thing we do have to keep reminding ourselves is she got more votes than the Labour Party, because it's easy to sort of get into the mindset of her losing the election, but she did get more votes.
Yeah, but she needs to have parliamentary authority to implement whatever she's doing.
We need to leave it there, both.
Got it.
Gents, thank you very much indeed. Now, the Prime Minister's new reliance on the DUP could have knock-on effects in Northern Ireland, where, remember, the power-sharing government broke down earlier this year. Alex Maskey is a senior Sinn Féin official and a member of the Stormont Assembly. He joined me from Belfast. Very good evening to you. Look, first question, are you not tempted to take your seats? It's a very finely balanced parliament. You could probably make a difference if you took your seats in that building behind me and back Jeremy Corbyn, for example.
Well, I think history has shown us that the British government has had virtually no interest here in the affairs of the business of people here, because, let's face it, and even in terms of the referendum around Brexit, the majority of people here in the north of Ireland voted to remain in the EU. British government, despite that, are determined to drag us out of the EU. In the recent elections, the British government, the Tory party, didn't receive one MP elected here in the north of Ireland. In fact, any of their candidates who ran got a very derisory number of votes. So Theresa May has absolutely no mandate here.
Just to be clear, you will not take seats in Westminster, even if there's a very finely balanced vote, for example, on something like Brexit. You would not take your seats here, even if you could make the difference to, for example, reversing or softening Brexit.
We have actually had a very strong mandate, and in fact we've taken seats from the SDLP, for example, who have been arguing for years that they needed to be in Westminster to have their voice heard. The nationalist population here have acknowledged that that voice has been repeatedly ignored, and contemptuously so, and our party has received a very sizable mandate to stay away from Westminster. The northern nationalist population have decided that no longer do we have any confidence whatsoever in people in Westminster to look after our interests. Now, we will do that on the island of Ireland.
Now, a very important principle has been that the British government is neutral between unionists and nationalists in Northern Ireland. Are you confident that the British government can remain neutral, and will respect that neutrality if it is reliant on DUP votes in order to maintain its majority here in London?
Well, I think this current arrangement may well prove to be reckless, but we'll have to wait and see. We will reflect on that. We have argued for some considerable time, particularly in recent times. The British government have been working in cahoots with particularly the Democratic Unionist Party to the disadvantage of the political process here. In fact, they called off the talks here very recently to re-establish our institutions. And I would add that the British public should actually have close scrutiny of the DUP and what that party represents and their behaviour in government here, because we have no government here in the north of Ireland precisely because of the behaviour and the arrogance and the alleged corruption of the DUP in government here in the north. So, you know, people need to make sure they understand what they're getting if they get the DUP in the government with the Tory party.
What do you think the DUP will want to get out of Theresa May when they sit and say, we can give you a majority?
Well, the only thing that the DUP have ever really argued for, first of all, they've been in a craven way supportive of the Tories. They're supportive of the austerity agenda. They're supportive of the cuts. They're supporting Brexit. And that's notwithstanding the fact that the majority of people here in the north, including many unionists, voted to remain in the EU. So the DUP are going to face a mighty challenge, because they're now going to go into an arrangement with the Tory party in Britain to exercise and to implement Brexit against the wishes of their own community here in the north of Ireland. So that'll be a significant challenge for the DUP to square away. say. Are the DUP going to support policies which will foment and create further austerity, budget cuts to their health service and so on? So I think those are big challenges which the DUP will have to face. But I would urge the British public to scrutinise the membership of the DUP, their behaviour in government here, their homophobia, their behaviour on race issues, their discriminatory policies here. All of these matters led to the downfall of our institutions here just a number of months ago, and that's the party that Theresa May is looking to bring into government with herself in London.
Mr Maskey, just one last one. Clearly the arrangements, the Good Friday Agreement arrangements have broken down. There's some possibility even of direct rule from Westminster, which I know you would hate. How bad can it get? What is the sort of the worst case, do you think, over the next year, 2 years, 5 years, if things don't improve?
Well, let's be very clear. The British government are co-guarantor, if you like. They have to implement and be truthful and faithful to the Good Friday Agreement. It's an international binding treaty between the British government and the Irish government. So we will expect the British government to honour their commitments in respect of the Good Friday Agreement. That means that they have to remain neutral, and we will be very carefully monitoring the behaviour of the British government in the time ahead. But remember this, one of the reasons why the Sinn Féin received a very resounding mandate to stay away from Westminster is because the national population has seen the behaviour, the partisan behaviour of this current British government over the last number of years. So therefore we will watch what's happening very carefully in terms of how the British government behaves, and as I've said, this will lead to a serious political challenge.
Alex Maskey, thanks for joining us tonight. Thanks.